The reason I decided to join the Temple of Thelema was I thought I could do some self-initiation. I put myself through a 0 = 0 degree, some Golden Dawn stuff, and said, okay, this is going to set me up for a month, and then a month from now I'll do the 1 = 10. So I wrote my own ritual. The Golden Dawn one looked way, way too complicated. I couldn't understand half of it. I set up my temple, and the candles were burning, and the incense was ready to make me gag, and it was all going great, and suddenly it was a point where I felt I would need to call on intuitive inspiration for the next step. So I stood there, and I now call down the divine wisdom of my angel. And eventually, after an embarrassing pause, the divine wisdom of my angel said, "You haven't a clue what you're doing." And that was when I thought I'd better go and find somebody to do this thing right, which was how I ended up being part of the group. But you can't do it on your own and ditch the ego. Egos aren't bad. You need an ego. I couldn't do this sitting here tonight. I just said I'm an anxiety case. Now I've got to address a room full of people, half of whom I've never met before. I need an ego out there as the mask for the real whatever I am back here. But ego is also a huge barrier. It becomes rigid, it becomes limiting, it becomes restricting. You need something more than that. And to keep that very simple, what you need is love. And you only get love from other people. Once love is directed, it's extremely effective. That's why we say, or the Book of the Law says, love is the law, love under will. It just means love is being guided as opposed to being shapeless, amorphous, undirected, and universal. It means it is being used effectively. Whatever said to me, you haven't a clue what you're doing, offered an act of love. I was appreciative. But a community, especially when you've got people in it who, A, have a lot more experience, and B, in our own case, since we are connected to a larger order in California, the Temple of Our Lady of, the Temple of the Silver Star, David Shoemaker's order. When I haven't a clue what I'm supposed to say or write, I've got someone I can email and say, you've got way more experience in terms of the years you've put in and in terms of the teaching you've received than I do. What the heck do I do now? And I can do that. And David was in turn taught by people who had profound experience, going all the way back through Carl Germer and Jane Wolfe to Aleister Crowley himself. You need that environment where somebody can say, oh, you screwed up, or you're lost, it's okay. Been there and done that. Now here's what I suggest you do. On your own, you are just stranded. You might see part of the answer. You might be one of those people who can get really clear intuitions, which is great. I've had a lot of those, but I've never had enough to have done anything really significant on my own. I needed that community, and I needed the love of other people around me, just to stop me flipping out. You can go nuts with this stuff. Just go online and see how many masters of the temple are involved with flame wars with each other. This week, it's out there. But all of these people who get caught up and they have an experience finally after a rough patch and think, okay, now I'm illumined. Well, no, you just took a baby step. But you don't know that if there aren't other people there to guide you. And there aren't other people who've had experience. I ended up being the head of the dean of the Temple of Thelem's Toronto group, simply because I screwed up so much in my first few years that I was probably the most experienced person in screw-ups, and was therefore highly qualified to guide other people through certain levels of personal screw-up. I'm now giving it another go with this thing. But you need that base of groundedness, you need that connection there. You're just not going to get higher levels of initiation, higher levels of gnosis, if you're not around people who've gone a step or two beyond you. Another thing that I think the Temple of Thelema did really well is mapping the elemental grades of the Tree of Life, that is from Malkuth through Yesod, Hod, and Netzach, and up into Tiphereth, to the developmental stages of childhood. This means that you're basically a newborn kid, as in the Golden Dawn system, neophyte 0 equals 0. You are a toddler in Malkuth, 1 equals 10. You are a preschooler in Yesod, 2 equals 9. You are in later childhood in Hod. You are hitting adolescence and puberty in Netzach. And finally, you come through late adolescence to adulthood in Tiphereth. Time and again, I've seen people going through the degree system. Temple of Thelema and ourselves use the word degree here because both orders see themselves as being in service to the AA, the Great Order. And if the AA has grades, and we have grades too, it's going to get muddling. Therefore, we talk about 0, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th degree. It doesn't have any occult significance other than it's just a way of making sure we know that if somebody is in AA as well as in our own order, we know what system we're talking to about in a conversation. But as you go through those developmental stages, there are certain crises that come up. The toddler eventually hits the terrible 2s and becomes fiercely antagonistic towards parents. It's just a wonderful time, and every parent loves it. The same thing is mimicked by somebody working with Malkuth, which is the earth energy, trying to get themselves beyond simple, mundane, earth-type issues and getting onto a higher plane of awareness. That's a little bit abstract as a statement. You kind of have to do it in order to experience it, but that is something I went through with changing a home, certain personal development phases, and so on. Then you've got this young child who's in grade school, equivalent to your soul. And he's dealing with a much bigger world. He's socializing now, he's developing relationships, he's learning information, he's getting all kinds of things that are helping him sort out what he likes and what he doesn't like, what she wants to do and what she doesn't want to do. A personality is really beginning to exhibit itself here. And that's what happens with your soul, that you are getting a sorting out of what your own identity is. Over in Hod, on the pillar of severity, you're dealing with that sort of pre-puberty phase of things. You're starting to develop abstract thinking at 9, 10, 11. You're starting to wonder. You're beginning to put fantasy into your mind. You're probably reading a lot of science fiction or fantasy because you're trying to stretch the horizons that limit you, and you want to go beyond where you've been at this point. Netzach is the sphere of the planet of Venus, so it's no mystery that it would pertain more to the mysteries of puberty and adolescence. But that in turn is about a deeper level of interaction with other people. You are not simply being friends. You can borrow my bike if I can read your book. You are hoping to score at this point, and therefore the transaction is a hell of a lot more important to you. There's a lot more at stake. You are developing a deeper connection with people, and spiritually you are starting to develop an awareness of the divine that didn't exist before. Now, any of those things may cut in depending on who the person is at an earlier point. Finally, there's a portal stage that is probationary to the adept stage in Tiphereth, portal would round out adolescence, and you've moved into adulthood. So that the realized individual, independent adult manifests in Tiphereth. That on the Golden Dawn level is really what you're talking about when you say you have an adept. It's someone who knows who they are, or at least knows who they're not, and has stopped trying to be the person that they can't be and are never going to be. There's been a lot of stuff dropped off along the way. There's been a fair bit of transformation happen. You're beginning to feel you're going to get somewhere, and that a huge hump is over. The same way at the end of adolescence, all of that emotional trauma and realignment in your own psyche is leveling out. You're beginning to think long term. I might want a career in whatever. You could imagine yourself having long-term relationships, marriage if that's the route you want to take, family if that's the route you want to take, that's a possibility, and so on and so on. My point about this with the theme of tonight, Aleister Crowley and happiness, is that once you have that beginning of confidence, beginning of self-knowledge, something else is there. You could almost call it faith, but that has such a bad name in Thelema. I offer certainty, not faith, while in life, on death, peace, unutterable rest, ecstasy. That's the quote, more or less. But we don't use the word faith. Confidence is probably a better term, but it's a confidence that comes from an innate knowledge of an innate rightness. And finding that means that you have to do a lot of sorting out along the way of the things that are wrongnesses. The stuff that hasn't worked in your life. Sometimes we invest years in relationships, or years in a training program, years in a job, years in whatever. It's all information for life. But it's not the ultimate thing. And a lot of people that I know have ended up changing several times an entire direction in life. I did 2 or 3 jumps. I've changed countries twice now. Started in journalism, got out of journalism, got into magazine journalism. It was a serpentine path that involved a lot of other things along the way. But at the end of all of that, I had a confidence that I was in sync with myself and not at odds with the world the way I'd always felt that I was, or felt that I might be, or was afraid that I might be.